Welcome to the deep dive. Today, wow, you've given us a really fascinating set of sources. We're diving straight into, well, the deep end of existentialism.
It's quite the topic.
Absolutely. We got the Wikipedia overview, which is helpful, but also some really specific analyses of existential themes in Leo Tolstoy, especially the death of Ivan Ilyich.
A classic example.
And even stuff on Tolstoy's own, like intense personal search for meaning, articles, a YouTube transcript. It's quite a mix.
It is. So the mission today.
Yeah, the mission is basically to cut through the sometimes dense philosophy and really get the core of existentialism and then see how these big ideas actually show up in literature and, well, in Tolstoy's own life.
Right. It's about understanding that human struggle, isn't it? Especially when the old answers don't seem to work anymore.
Exactly. So, okay, starting broad, Wikipedia defines existentialism as like a family of philosophy, all looking at the individual trying to live authentically in a world that, well, I can seem pretty absurd or meaningless.
That's a good starting point. It throws up key ideas straight away, meaning purpose, value.
Yeah, and existential crises, angst, courage, freedom, all that heavy stuff.
It's all in there. The key is really that focus on the individual and their lived subjective experience. It's less about these grand abstract systems.
Right. More about the nitty-gritty of being alive.
Precisely.
Which leads us straight to Tolstoy. Now, he's not someone you immediately label existentialist like, say, Sartre.
No, not formally. The label came later.
But clearly, reading this material, he was wrestling with the exact same questions. What's the point? What does life mean? What about death?
He absolutely was. His personal writings and his fiction are just saturated with these concerns. It makes him sort of an unintentional case study.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see these philosophical ideas bubbling up in someone outside the formal movement, if you can even call it that.
And having this mix of sources is great. We get the wide angle from Wikipedia, then zoom right into Tolstoy's fiction, and then even closer into his personal diaries and reflections.
It gives us layers, right, of the philosophy, the art, the lived experience.
Exactly, a multifaceted view.
Okay, so let's really try and nail down the core of existentialism. That phrase often linked to Sartre. Existence precedes essence. Can we unpack that a bit? It sounds philosophical.
It does, but the idea is actually quite fundamental. Think about making a paper knife. The idea of the knife, its purpose, its essence, comes before the actual physical knife exists.
Okay, sure. The blueprint comes first.
Right. But for humans, existentialists argue it's the other way around. We exist first. We're just sort of thrown into the world without a predefined purpose or nature.
So no blueprint for us.
Nope. We create our essence, who we are, what we value, our purpose through the choices we make, the actions we take. We define ourselves after we start existing.
Wow. So the responsibility is entirely on us.
That's the crux of it. You're not born as something specific. You become something through living. You're the author of you.
Which makes authenticity super important then. Living according to the values you've chosen, not just what society tells you.
Exactly. Authenticity is about owning those choices, aligning your actions with your self-created value, resisting that external pressure to conform, to live someone else's idea of a good life. It's about being true to the self you are actively.
And the Wikipedia notes say existentialism kind of pushes back against those big, neat philosophical systems.
Yeah, they felt those systems often miss the messiness, the concrete reality of being a human, the anxiety, the freedom, the joy, the absurdity. Existentialism wants to engage with that.
It makes sense why it's spread so far then. Theology, art, literature, psychology.
Because it taps into universal human concerns. Anyone exploring what it means to be human is likely to touch on these themes of freedom, choice, meaning, responsibility.
Okay, so key takeaways so far. Personal freedom, the massive responsibility that comes with it, and this idea of conscious choice in finding out who we are and what life's about.
You've got it. Those are the central pillars, really.
Now, the history is interesting. Kierkegaard is often pointed to as the originator.
The father figure, often.
No, but Sartre was the first to actually use the label existential. And people even debate going back to Socrates. It feels less like a single doctrine and more like a long conversation.
That's a great way to put it. It is a long conversation. The term itself solidified mid-20th century, especially post-war with Sartre, Camus, de Beauvoir. But the core questions, they're ancient.
And Kierkegaard's big thing was subjective truth, wasn't it? What matters is what you believe and how you live it.
Precisely. He championed the passionate, engaged individual over detached, objective reason. It's about your relationship with truth, how you live authentically. That focus resonates hugely with later existentialists, and you can definitely see echoes in Tolstoy's personal quest.
And pinning down one definition is tough, like Wikipedia says. It's more like a general approach, maybe,
Yeah.
rejecting certain kinds of thinking.
Exactly. It's often defined as much by what it rejects rigid systems, predetermined essences, as by what it positively asserts. It's a shared orientation towards these fundamental human questions.
And then there's that split, atheistic versus theistic existentialism.
Right. A key distinction. Sartre, for example, argued that true existentialism follows logically from atheism. No God means no pre-given human nature, making us radically free.
But others weren't atheists.
No. Thinkers like Kierkegaard, Marcel, or even Tillich later on explored these themes within a religious framework. For them, it's more about the individual's struggle with faith, the search for meaning in relation to the divine, but still emphasizing personal choice and commitment. They're asking, what is life good for, even within a universe that might have a God?
So does belief in God lessen the burden of freedom for theistic existentialists?
Oh.
Or just change its nature?
That's a key question. Generally, they'd say freedom is still paramount, perhaps seen as a divine gift. The responsibility to choose authentically remains, but the context is different. It's not about following a detailed divine script, but about a personal lived engagement with faith.
Still subjective then.
Very much so. The focus stays on the individual's experience and commitment.
I like that Kierkegaard quote about the subjective thinker's form and style, that the way you express these ideas has to be rich and personal, not just abstract, poetic, ethical, religious, all mixed together.
Yeah, he believed the how of communication was as important as the what. It has to reflect the lived reality, the inwardness in existing as a human being, as he put it. Truth isn't just known, it's lived.
So could you see Tolstoy's novels, with their deep character dot, as his way of doing that, exploring these ideas through lived stories, not essays?
Absolutely. That's a perfect connection. His narratives are his form of existential inquiry. He's grappling with these questions through the concrete lives of his characters.
Okay, let's move to some key concepts. First one, facticity. Sartre's in itself, Heidegger's thrownness. What is this?
Facticity. Think of it as the set of brute facts about your existence that you didn't choose. Your past, your body, the family and society you were born into, the historical moment.
The stuff that's just there, the starting point.
Exactly. Heidegger's thrownness captures that feeling. You just find yourself already here in the situation with these conditions. It's the non-negotiable backdrop.
So it's a limitation.
Yeah.
Things we can't change.
It is a limitation in that sense. Yes, you can't change your past. But crucially, it's also the condition for your freedom. Your choices and values don't happen in a vacuum. They emerge in response to your facticity.
Okay. So my circumstances shape my options, and my choices react to those circumstances.
Precise. Your facticity doesn't determine your future, but it provides the context within which you exercise your freedom. You choose how to interpret and respond.
And inauthenticity comes in when we try to deny our facticity, pretend it doesn't exist or doesn't matter.
Right, like ignoring your past mistakes or maybe focusing only on some idealized future without acknowledging your present limitations. It's a kind of self-deception, refusing to own the reality of your situation.
So authentic being means facing the future while acknowledging that reality, grounding your choices in who and where you actually are.
Yeah, it's that honest engagement, understanding your possibilities and your limits, and choosing from that place of awareness.
Okay, next concept, the other and the look. Sounds intriguing. The other connects to intersubjectivity.
Right. The other, with a capital O, isn't just another person. It's the experience of encountering another free, conscious subject who sees the world, including you, from their own perspective. This encounter is what establishes that the world isn't just my private experience, it's shared, objective. That's intersubjectivity.
And the look, that's when we realize we're being seen.
Exactly. It's that moment of awareness. I am being perceived by this other. And Sartre argues this experience can be fundamentally objectifying.
Objectifying. How so?
It makes you aware of yourself as an object in the other's world, judged and categorized through their eyes. Think of Sartre's peeping Tom.
Yeah, you mentioned that. He feels shame when he thinks someone sees him.
Right. Before he hears the creak, he's just absorbed in looking. Then snap, he sees himself as the other might see him as a peeping Tom. That sudden self-consciousness, that shame, is the experience of the look.
And for Sartre, that shame is proof that other minds exist. It knocks down solipsism.
That's his argument, yes. You can only feel that kind of shame if you implicitly accept the reality of the judging other. And interestingly, the look doesn't need someone actually looking.
Right. You said just the possibility can do it. That feeling and you trip in public, even if no one saw you, still feel foolish.
Exactly. That's your internalization of the potential bays of the other. It co-constitutes your sense of self, your facticity even.
Okay, last key concept here, angst and dread, the negative side of freedom.
Pretty much. It's that unsettling feeling, that anxiety, that arises when we fully confront our radical freedom and the total responsibility that comes with it. There's no script, no external authority telling us what's right. It's all on us.
The cliff example is perfect. The dread isn't just falling. It's the realization that I could choose to jump. Nothing is stopping me but me.
Exactly. It's the vertigo of possibility. The sheer openness of our freedom can be terrifying.
Is it like that Sunday night feeling? You know, the week ahead is blank and you have to decide what to fill it with. That mix of possibility and, oh, God, pressure.
That definitely taps into it. It's that awareness of open time and the burden of choice. Kierkegaard connected this to hope and fear. Too, freedom means the possibility of choosing well, but also of choosing badly.
Right. Now, let's touch on existentialism versus nihilism. People often confuse them.
Yeah, very often. They both stem from that feeling of anguish when the world seems to lack inherent meaning or objective value. Nietzsche is a key figure here for both movements.
Declaring God is dead and all that.
Right. That sense that traditional foundations for meaning have crumbled.
But the difference is crucial. Existentialists don't just throw their hands up and say nothing matters, do they?
Generally, no. Nihilism tends toward the conclusion that values are base, meaning is impossible. Existentialism, while often starting from a similar place of acknowledging absurdity or lack of objective grounding, emphasizes our response.
Like Camus saying we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding meaning in the struggle.
Exactly. It's about creating meaning, affirming values, living authentically despite the apparent meaninglessness. Kierkegaard finds it in faith. Sartre explores ethic. They don't dismiss morality or self-created purpose. The angst is about the lack of external guarantees for our choice, not necessarily the impossibility of meaning.
So, acknowledging the abyss, but choosing to build something anyway.
That's a good way to think about it, persisting through the absurd.
Okay, let's talk about some precursors and key figures. We touched on Kierkegaard and Nietzsche in the 19th century. What about Dostoevsky?
Dostoevsky. Crucial. Not a philosopher in the academic sense, but his novels, Notes from Underground, The Brothers Karamazov, are like laboratories for existential crises. His characters are pushed to the brink, forced to confront freedom, suffering, faith, doubt, the search for meaning.
So he explored it all through fiction.
Deeply. Sartre and Camus both acknowledged his huge influence. He dramatized the existential condition.
Then, early 20th century, Unamuno in Spain, focusing on the flesh and bone.
Yes. Unamuno reacted against abstract rationalism, emphasizing the passionate, often contradictory live. His focus on the tragic, sometimes absurd quest for faith, like his use of Don Quixote, is very existential.
Ortega y Gasset. I am myself and my circumstance. That sounds like facticity again.
It's very similar. Yo soy yo y mi circunstancia. Our being is always situated, concrete. Sartre's situation echoes this. We're not abstract minds, we're embodied beings in a specific world.
Then there's Buber, focusing on relationships, man with man.
Right. Martin Buber emphasized dialogue, the I-thou relationship, the sphere of between. He brought a crucial relational dimension, reminding us that existence isn't just solitary introspection.
Jaspers in Germany with existence philosophy. Philosophy as a way to become oneself.
Yeah, Karl Jaspers saw philosophy's goal not just as knowing objects, but as elucidating the thinker's own being, a path to authentic selfhood.
And Heidegger. Controversial, maybe not strictly existentialist, but being in time was massively influential.
Hugely influential. His analysis of Dasein human existence, using categories like thrownness, anxiety, being towards death, provided a powerful vocabulary for existential thought, even if his later philosophy went elsewhere and his political affiliations remained deeply problematic.
And then the big names people usually think of, Sartre and de Beauvoir.
Absolutely. Sartre explicitly embraced the label and popularized many core ideas with works like Being and Nothingness and Existentialism is a Humanism. And Simone de Beauvoir's contribution was immense, applying existentialist ethics to understand gender in The Second Sex and exploring ambiguity and ethics in other works. She's foundational.
It even seeped into theology. Tillet, Boltman.
Yes, applying existential concepts to understand faith, scripture, and the human condition within a Christian context, trying to make it relevant for modern times.
And the arts. Literature from Camus, Kafka, Sartre. Theater like No Exit, Hell is Other People.
Oh, right. Art and literature were incredibly fertile ground. They could explore the nuances, the emotions, the dilemmas of existentialism in ways that straight philosophy sometimes couldn't.
And it branches out further, Black existentialism, exploring race and freedom.
Crucial work, yes. Thinkers like Fanon, Gordon, Hooks, applying existentialist lenses to the specific experiences of Black individuals facing oppression and forging identity.
And even therapy. Logotherapy, existential psychotherapy.
Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, focusing on the search search for meaning is a direct application. Existential ideas have deeply influenced how we think about mental health, purpose, and coping with life's challenges.
Okay, let's really zoom in on Tolstoy now. That essay on the death of Ivan Ilyich paints it as pure existentialism in narrative form.
It really does. The argument is that Ivan's whole life is built on, well, fakeness, superficiality, conformity, climbing the social ladder, doing what's proper.
Keeping up appearances.
Exactly. He never really asks himself what he values, what makes life meaningful for him. He just follows the societal script.
Until he gets sick.
And facing death forces him to confront the absolute emptiness of the life he's built. It's terrifying for him precisely because it was so inauthentic.
So the illness becomes the catalyst for an existential crisis.
Absolutely. It strips everything bare. The essay connects this to core existentialist ideas, the emphasis on freedom, choice, the potential meaninglessness if we don't create meaning, and the search for authenticity. Ivan's journey is a stark warning, really.
And that confrontation with mortality is key. It's what pushes him towards potentially finding some kind of authenticity, even at the very end.
That's the interpretation, yes. Facing the finitude of his existence forces the question of meaning. It highlights that individual responsibility. His life felt empty because of his choices, his conformity. The path to meaning, even in his final moments, involves confronting that truth.
The essay also stresses freedom and choice. Right. Even while dying, his internal struggle is about his past choices.
Yes. Even within the ultimate constraint of dying, the focus shifts to his agency, how he lived. It underlines that inherent freedom and the weight of responsibility that existentialists talk about.
Okay, now shifting to Tolstoy himself, his personal search. The sources describe his depression almost like a mortal illness.
He uses that analogy himself, doesn't he? A profound sense of meaninglessness that just crippled him, overshadowed everything. It wasn't just intellectual doubt. It was a deep, visceral crisis of existence.
And his critique of science and philosophy? He felt they hit a wall.
He did. He saw science as brilliant at explaining how things work, the cause and effect in the material world. But when it came to the ultimate why, the purpose, the meaning of it all, he found it silent, even nonsensical if it tried to impose a final cause. Abstract philosophy felt similarly disconnected from lived reality.
For reason alone wasn't enough to answer his deepest questions.
That was his conclusion. He felt a gap between rational knowledge and the human heart's need for meaning, for something to make sense of suffering and death. Science could describe life, but couldn't tell him what it was good for.
And he outlines those 4 ways people cope with absurdity: ignorance, pleasure-seeking, Epicureanism, suicide, or just resigned weakness.
Yeah, it's a bleak list. He analyzes them and finds them all ultimately inadequate. Ignorance is temporary, pleasure is shallow distraction, suicide is defeat, and resignation is just living death. None solved his core problem.
Which leads him to faith, but he calls it irrational knowledge.
Yes, and that's a fascinating term. For him, faith wasn't about blindly accepting dogma, but about accessing a different kind of knowledge, an intuitive grasp of life's meaning that reason couldn't provide. It's what connects the finite human life to something infinite, giving it purpose that suffering and death can't destroy.
So not necessarily a specific religion, but the act of believing itself.
That seems to be the core of it, initially. He famously said, if man lives, he believes in something. Faith, in this sense, is the very strength of life, the conviction that makes life possible despite its apparent absurdity. It provides the answer to why.
And he saw this kind of faith embodied in the ordinary working people, didn't he? Contrasting their acceptance with his circle's dissatisfaction.
That was a huge turning point. He saw in the peasants a simple, powerful faith that allowed them to endure hardship and find meaning in their labor and their lives, something his own intellectual, privileged class seemed incapable of. It profoundly challenged him.
And the sources confirm he seriously contemplated suicide because the why questions were just unbearable.
Yes, he was in deep despair. Philosophy gave him Schopenhauer saying non-existence is better. Science gave him Darwinism suggesting we're just accident. Bleak stuff.
And you see these exact struggles mirrored in his characters, Levin in Anna Karenina, Prince Andrei and Pierre in War and Peace.
Absolutely. His fiction became the battleground for these existential questions. The search for meaning, the disillusionment with superficial life, the confrontation with death, the yearning for fate. These aren't just plot devices. They're distillations of his own lifelong spiritual and philosophical journey.
Okay, so wrapping this up, existentialism fundamentally stresses our freedom, our responsibility to forge meaning in a world that doesn't hand it to us on a plate.
Right. Existence first, then essence through choice.
And Tolstoy, both in his own tortured surge and through characters like Ivan Ilyich, gives us this incredibly powerful human illustration of what that looks like in practice. The tragedy of an unexamined, inauthentic life.
and the desperate, necessary search for something more, something that connects our brief lives to a larger sense of purpose, which for him, ultimately, was found in a form of faith.
It really does make you reflect, doesn't it? Listening to this, you might recognize echoes of these struggles in your own thought or in stories that move you. Thinking about facticity, the stuff we didn't choose but have to work with, or the look how we navigate being seen by others, and that angst that comes with knowing we're free and responsible.
These aren't just abstract ideas. They touch on how we actually live day to day, how we make choices, how we relate to others, how we find value.
In Tolstoy's journey, it's striking that even facing what seemed like total meaninglessness, the need for meaning didn't go away. It pushed him towards something beyond just reason.
That drive seems fundamental, doesn't it?
It does. So maybe the question to leave listeners with is, what gives your existence its deepest meaning? And how do you navigate the uncertainties, the thrownness, the freedom that comes with being alive? Something to ponder long after this deep dive.